Hey, it's Thomas here, and today we're gonna have some real talk about UV sterilizers, what they're good for, what they're not good for, and what you should never do with them. All right, so let's start with the good. What's a UV sterilizer and how does it work? What is it good for? A UV sterilizer is a tool, it's a filtration device that we use in aquariums to help purify the water of certain pests and ailments such as waterborne algae, bacteria, or even pests like ick and other parasites. The key thing is they have to be waterborne, meaning they have to float in the water column so that they can pass through the UV sterilizer, which will pound them with UV light, destroying them and nullifying them from the system. So they're useful. So in essence, it's really good for things like green water, which is waterborne algae floating around causing your tank to look green. Get rid of that, no problem. If you have a bacterial bloom, which was causing your water to turn white, for instance, it'll help remove that as well. And get rid of parasites like ick or flukes or any sort of waterborne stage of a parasite like the larval stage. It'll just nullify all of that. So what can't a UV sterilizer do? They cannot get rid of algae inside the aquarium that's actually attached to things like hair algae, blackbeard algae. It's not going to be able to affect that algae because the algae would actually have to pass through the UV sterilizer to get those UV rays and be destroyed. So it may help slow down the spread of certain types of algae that are growing on things if they basically reproduce through spores in the water. It might help slow it down, but it's not going to get rid of it. You're going to have to do something else to get rid of that algae. Manual removal works really well, but long story short, it can't touch that. It also won't really help with things like cyanobacteria or bacterial blooms inside the aquarium that are on things. Like I said, it's got to actually pass through the UV sterilizer in order to get nullified. So it just can't do that. And I know you wish it could, and I wish it could too, but it can't. What else can't they do? UV sterilizers also cannot feed your fish or change your filters or, allow your spouse to make you want to spend more money on aquarium stuff. And now let's talk about what you shouldn't do with it. Starting with an anecdote, there was a coworker in our office here, who I know personally, who decided he was going to see if the UV sterilizer bulb was still working by pulling it out of the sheath and looking at it, which you shouldn't do. There's warnings all over it telling you not to look directly at the bulb, but he decided to, look at the bulb. Not for very long either, maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds. And he ended up going to the hospital because of it, because he lost his vision temporarily that evening and burned his face. It looked like a really bad sunburn. All in all, not very smart. Ever since then, we've called them ultraviolet sterilizers, and we make fun of him for being silly. Don't do it! They will hurt you. They have ultraviolet rays that destroys things like bacteria and algae and other organisms. It can hurt you. Be safe. Shield your face. Don't plug it in and stare at the bulb with it on. It doesn't even look like much. It's ultraviolet. It's past the visual spectrum. It's a faint little light bulb. Finally, let's talk quickly about how you implement a UV sterilizer, because they are really useful tools to have in your setup. Most UV sterilizers run in line, meaning you're going to hook a tube to them and hook another tube to a pump some water through it back into the tank, and you're done. You can also run them inline with a canister filter, just snipping the tube and junctioning it in there, and it's going to do a great job. There are also some hang-on-the-back UV sterilizers and a few internal options that are out there in the world. I've always found the inlines to be the most effective, so that's usually what I stick with. Well, I hope I was able to clear up some of the common misconceptions about UV sterilizers and help you guys decide whether or not one's good for your system. If you have any questions, though, feel free to drop those down in the comment section below or reach out to us on social media like Facebook or Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe because we've got new videos coming out all the time. And as always, keep on tanking without burning your eyes out of your head by doing something silly. Don't do it. A UV sterilizer is a light-emitting bulb that sterilizes through UV. So what can a UV sterilizer not do? Can't do, shouldn't do, just won't do, it refuses. And what shouldn't you do with a UV sterilizer? What you shouldn't do with a sterilizer of the ultraviolet technologies?